Have you ever wondered what could be hiding beneath the surface of a picture? Or noticed something subtly wrong with the music that you've been listening to? Or felt that something's off with the video that you just watched, but can't put a finger on it? Then someone must have placed a hidden file within it. This process of stashing encrypted files or messages with pictures, audio, video, or even websites is called steganography. Wait. Stegosaurus? Steganography. Steganography. Hi, I'm Jezah Mae Bagsit from Mathematics of the Modern World, Y16, and today I am going to be talking about all things steganography. Learn about hidden figures or files within everyday things like text, image, video, audio, and even networks, plus its techniques. Let me show you a prime example that used different types of steganography that eventually became the most mysterious and most infamous puzzle on the internet, which is Cicada 3301.
On the 4th of January 2012, a user on 4chan posted this image to the site's infamous B or random board. The anonymous author, who went by the 4-digit pseudonym 3301, challenged users to uncover a message hidden within the image. Unbeknownst to those who stumbled across it, someone had just set in motion one of the most elaborate scavenger hunts the internet has ever seen. Within minutes of the image being posted, someone discovered that by opening the file using a text editor, an appended string of readable text could be found. The string contained a cipher that, once deciphered, formed a link to yet another image. At first, this appeared to be a dead end, but using an application known as OutGuess, users were able to extract hidden information embedded within the first image. The extracted information led to a subreddit, which in turn contained information about the book. The book, along with a code, could then be used to uncover a phone number that, when called, played this pre-recorded message.
Very good. You have done well. There are 3 prime numbers associated with the original final.jpg image. 3301 is one of them. You will have to find the other 2. Multiply all 3 of these numbers together and add a .com on the end to find the next step. Good luck. Goodbye.
Now that you've seen that, it's very creepy, right? So, Cicada 3301 has 3 sets of puzzles, wherein the first one is solved by a select few, while the 2 others remain unsolved and still being decrypted. It used image steganography for the first clues for each puzzle and audio steganography. Text steganography was also used in the second and third puzzles through runes. So now that we've seen an example of steganography, what does it mean? Steganography is the art of hiding and transmitting data through safe carriers to conceal data. It is from the Greek word steganos, which means covered or roughly translated, secret writing. It has been around for 2,500 years under various forms that has been used in military, diplomatic, personal, and intellectual property applications. This has been used for secret communication for millennia, as I've said, 2,500 years, and has only evolved as the world becomes a less secure place through the internet. The difference between steganography and cryptography is that in steganography, no one knows that the sender and receiver are communicating secretly, while in cryptography, only the message is hidden, which makes steganography a safer and more secretive form of communication than cryptography. Now that we know what steganography means, let us go to its history. Its first known use dates back to 440 BC, where Herodotus mentioned 2 examples in his book Histories. The first one was Astyages, who shaved the head of a messenger and wrote to Aristagoras of Miletus, encouraging him to revolt against the king of Persia. In order for the Aristagoras to read the message, he must shave the head of Astyages' messenger. The second one was Demartus in 480 BC, who used wax tablets, or silk compressed into a ball, or in this case, a flat surface, and covered with wax. This picture is not the wax tablet, but it is an example of wax tablets which are widely used. Next is Johannes Stromitius, who wrote Steganography in 1499, which is a book written about cryptography and steganography hidden under the guise of a book about magic. It was written in Latin and was published in Frankfurt, Germany. In World War II, it is not a secret that there are a lot of secret messages going around, but the ways of delivering the secret messages to the receiver evolved and became more sophisticated. Microdots, invisible inks, null ciphers, and other discrete ways of transmitting a message became widely used. And lastly, digital steganography emerged at the same time as people were starting to use personal computers, which was around 1925. They came out in different formats with different storage capacities and is widely used nowadays. Circling back to my first example, the Cicada 3301 took advantage of a lot of steganographic techniques because not a lot of people know how to decipher it or even have any idea what steganography is. So now that we know the history of steganography, let us go to its types. There are two main types, which are physical and digital steganography. So let us first go to physical steganography. So of course, physical steganography was used before the digital times. There are a lot of examples, but I'm only giving a few of them and explain a little bit about how they're being used. The first example is invisible ink. And it is one of the most common steganographic practices, and a lot of substances can also be used in invisible ink, like lemon juice, cola, wine, vinegar, milk, soapy water, and even saliva. For images, chemicals are mostly used like starch, iodine, iron sulfate, silver nitrate, and even salt. One example of invisible ink is the things that we see in our paper bills that appears only when exposed in ultraviolet light to prove its authenticity and even for aesthetic purposes. Another example of physical steganography is null cipher. It is a form of steganography because the real message is mixed with normal text, which is indistinguishable when one reads it once or if you are not the intended receiver of the message. Let us take a look at the example that I made. Take note of the fifth word. Every fifth word, and the hidden message is One Direction is back. Next is Bacon cipher. Bacon cipher is another form of steganography, and it was invented by Francis Bacon, and it uses two different but almost identical font styles for both uppercase and lowercase letters. Aside from using two font styles, every 5 letters corresponds to a single letter of a secret message. Here we have a picture of what the combinations of font styles corresponds to a letter. Next are microdots. Microdots are tiny dots, as suggested by the name, wherein text and images can be shrunk into small dots. Hence the name, microdots, of course. These were first developed in the late 19th century and was improved in the 20th century, and was heavily used in World War I, and World War II, and the Cold War. And there is a specialized microdot camera used to decipher these little dots that contain sensitive information. Next is Morse code. It can be categorized as a steganographic technique because no one knows except for the receiver that one is transmitting a message. Morse code is a collection of dots and dashes, each corresponding to a letter. Here is the picture of the complete alphabet in Morse code, and can be sent through taps, flashes, blinks, and other forms that can be interpreted as a dot and dash. Now, let us go to digital steganography. There are 5 main types: text, image, audio, video, and network steganography. So we have the first one, which is text steganography. Text steganography is hiding information within text files, hence the name, and null cipher is an example of text steganography. There are also other methods like format-based method, wherein the format of the text is altered, like changing the spacing between letters or font size. Another method is random and statistical generation, wherein in random generation, it is based on character and word sequences within a text, so it is randomized. while statistical generation is based on statistical properties of word length and letter frequency. And the last method is linguistic method, which uses linguistic structure to hide messages and can also be hidden in the syntactic nature itself. So an example of text steganography, the prime example that is very popular in pop culture right now, is when Taylor Swift announced the release date for her re-recorded version of her second album, Fearless. In the message, it looked like she was sending a simple thank you message for the fans about the song. Love Story, Taylor's version, was received. It wasn't until fans noticed that some letters are capitalized, spelled April 9th, and they're getting the release date of Fearless, Taylor's version. This used the random method and format-based method. And the next type is image steganography. This is the most common form of steganography, as this type uses images to hide data. Pixel intensities are used to hide data, and the number of bits. The differences are barely noticeable to the naked eye because the changes are made down to the pixels and bits. The first clue of Cicada 3301 used image steganography, but not in the usual way because code hidden within the image is generated in the app called Outguess. Next is audio steganography. In this type of steganography, data is stored in audio files, and this can be hidden with the sound files that end with WAV, AU, and MP3, which are also different types of sound files. Another method is video steganography, wherein data is stored in digital video format. Hidden data can be kept in video formats like H.264, MP4, MPEG, and AVI, which are also common video formats. So now, let us go to steganographic techniques. The first technique is substitution systems, and it is a technique in steganography that substitutes insignificant parts of the cover or types of steganography by secret message bits. The information can only be extracted if the receiver knows the positions where it was embedded, and only minor modifications are made, and they are mostly subtle or completely unrecognizable to attackers. The first kind of substitution system is the least significant bit, or LSB, and it is one of the most common substitution systems. This technique substitutes the last bits of information in a byte that is not necessarily important as the beginning bits. Next is pseudo-random permutation, and it is a technique that randomizes the order of the secret message bits over the cover. Next is image downgrading, and it is a special substitution system wherein the image acts both as a secret message and a cover. In this technique, the sender exchanges the 4 least significant bits of the cover with the 4 most significant bits of the secret message, and the receiver can only decipher this by reversing what the sender has done. The palette-based image can be encoded and manipulated in 2 ways, through the palette or the image data. The LSB, or the least significant bit, of the colors could be used for information transfer. The palette doesn't necessarily need to be sorted, so the information can be encoded the same way that the colors are sorted in the palette. Next is quantization. It is also another kind of substitution system, wherein the number of pixels in images are reduced without losing the quality and the important information of the image. This is an example of a quantized image. Next is dithering, and it's also another type of substitution system used in computer graphics to create the illusion of color of depth in images with a limited color palette. So this is an example of a dithered image. Binary images contain redundancies wherein black and white pixels are distributed. So this is an example of a binary picture. Lastly, using unused or reverse spaces as covers is also a good substitution system, as it does not perceptually degrade the cover. The next type of steganographic technique is called transform domain, wherein it hides messages in a significant area of the cover image. Then noise is added, the file is compressed, or it is cropped to make the cover more robust to attack, and it is still imperceptible to the human eye. This uses a discrete cosine transform, which is a technique used in image pixels to transform them into a frequency where it can be redundant. This is an example of a discrete cosine transform. This is the basic 64-bit image that can be generated from this steganographic technique. The spread spectrum technique spreads hidden data through the frequency spectrum. This is done to ensure the proper recovery of signal sent through a noisy channel and by producing redundant copies of the data signal. Next is distortion. Distortion techniques are a contrast of substitution systems because it requires the knowledge of the original cover in the decoding process. Modifications in the sequence are made by the sender, are chosen in a way that it corresponds to a specific sequence message. In conclusion, the advantages of steganography are safe communication, sensitive information to be protected, and privacy is retained between the sender and receiver. There's no threat of anyone else but both the sender and receiver knowing what the message contained. The main disadvantages of steganography to humanity is that this is being used for illegal transactions, for plotting terrorist and dangerous acts that can harm anyone online and offline. We can use steganography to make our lives better through secure communication and only using it for good means. But that is almost impossible to achieve since people mostly use this to hide something that would be or could be potentially harmful once exposed. I hope you all enjoyed this informative video about steganography. Keep safe and remember to always check your privacy online. Once again, this is Jezah Mae Bagsit for Mathematics in the Modern World Y16. And this is Double Take Behind the Facade.